Hey friends, welcome back to Reasoned Reality. My name is Joe Smith. I'm your host. Today's episode is a little different, and I'm honestly very excited about it. Instead of talking about national headlines or political theory or just kind of Christian nationalism from this 10,000 foot view, we're talking with people who are actually stepping into the arena and trying to change things from the ground up. All three of our guests today are grassroots candidates who have decided that the only way to change the system is to change it directly. So we've got Harry Jarin, who is a small business owner and volunteer firefighter running for Congress in Maryland's 5th Congressional District, a seat long held by Representative Hoyer, who just announced his retirement. So yay. We're also joined by Bri Woodson. She's a grassroots candidate running for Congress in Georgia's 12th Congressional District, who's building a campaign centered on community engagement and local organizing. And finally, we'll talk with Hunter Miranda, who is an attorney and community advocate running for Congress with a focus on economic justice and challenging the influence of big money in politics. Y'all, thank you so much for jumping on here with us. I know it took a little bit of juggling to get everybody's schedule, but I'm really excited about this. So just thank you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I think I want to start here. I don't think I realized just how difficult it is to be a grassroots candidate. And I'm wondering if you all can just kind of like share your experiences with that just a little bit. Maybe, Bri, if you want to kick that off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think running for... It's interesting that you bring this up first because I actually posted on Threads about this yesterday and it was very well received. I said something to the tune of, running for any position, any political office is hard. It's a challenge in and of itself, but particularly running a grassroots campaign, also while being a Black woman in the Deep South, is it ain't for the weak. And so I think some of the challenges that people genuinely don't think about is just how much everything seriously costs. And this is why incumbents win over and over and over. Like, I'm going up against the incumbent who has almost a $2 million war chest. He's not going to make any efforts to actually do any campaigning. He just announced office hours so that people can go to him up until May 19th. He's not going to come out to us. We got to go to him. Right. But maybe it's because he's a little tired. He's been at this a while. He's been at this a decade. But it's such a huge barrier. We were talking a little bit before we started recording about filing fees. Yesterday, I officially qualified, or the day before yesterday. Was it yesterday? I don't know. The days blur. It was sometime this week. I qualified.
It was a big day, whichever day it was.
It was a big day, whatever day it was.
Yeah. Round of applause for Bri.
Thank you. So I qualified, but that also came with a $5,220 price tag, right? And then, you have things like buying your voter roll. Then you have things like software to use the voter roll to develop your canvassing and door knocking routes, which can cost hundreds and thousands a month. You have marketing, you have advertising, print materials. Thank goodness my staff is all volunteer basis. Thank God for those ladies. I wouldn't be here without them. But those are definitely, I think, some of the not as well-known challenges. Like, we all know campaigns cost money because obviously we've all seen our politicians asking for donations, our candidates asking for donations. But I don't think people fully realize how much exactly goes into this. And it's a lot.
Anybody else want to jump in? Kind of share your story?
You want to go for it, Harry?
Sure. We were talking a little bit before we got going about how the system, especially in a lot of these Deep South states, it's sort of this leftover of the Jim Crow system, that we got rid of things like poll taxes in the 1960s, but there are still a lot of barriers to entry, even things like the primary runoff system. Like we saw, there's been a lot of talk of that after the Texas primary. That's another leftover from the Jim Crow era. I got to say, Maryland is a lot better than most states in terms of that stuff. It's very easy to get on the ballot in Maryland. Anybody with $100 and a ride to Annapolis can get on the ballot in at least for a congressional race. It's actually quite easy. Now, for that reason, there are now 24 primary candidates in my primary. So Steny Hoyer dropped out a few weeks ago. Filing deadline was at the end of February, and everyone and their mother has been waiting for this seat to open since, Steny Hoyer's been in that seat since 1981. So the challenge for me now is to differentiate myself in a very crowded field. And I would say that the biggest challenge is, and I ran into this even before Steny Hoyer dropped out. Remember, I started my campaign as a primary challenger to Steny Hoyer. I'm 36, he's 86. I think there's a little bit of it's crazy, right? I think there's a little bit of we'll call it mental inertia that this is the oldest Congress that we've ever had in American history. So people kind of have a preconceived idea of what a member of Congress looks like, because most of our members of Congress are old men. And so people, when it comes time to replace them, people seem to look for other old men. It's very weird how
you gotta have some gray to qualify, Harry.
Right.
I have like one, I'm a new dad, so I have like one gray hair. I found one gray hair back here the other day. So I'm like,
Get you some spray dye.
I'm hopeful. You know what? All right.
Get a cane.
I'm hopeful. My dad's almost 70, and he, like, his beard went gray, like everything else went gray, but like up here, he doesn't dye his hair or anything. So I'm hoping up here I'm going to stay.
You just need to wear some like readers or something. Just put them on the end of your nose. Like, you don't need them. Just look over.
Just age yourself. Just age yourself.
Exactly.
It's funny. It's something I talk about all the time with my husband is of Vietnamese ancestry, and so he's the same age that I am, but he looks very young, and it's hard for him in like job interviews because he's applying for these very senior director positions, but he just looks much younger than he actually is.
I have a good friend whose family's from China, and it's the exact same way. We're the same age, and he looks like he's in his 20s, and I'm just like,
I had the opposite problem. So I worked in China for a year, and Chinese people have absolutely no idea how old white people are. It's like the complete opposite. So at the time, it was my first job out of college. I was 21 years old, and everyone thought I was like 40. People had absolutely no idea.
I mean, to be fair.
Right.
What about you, Hunter? What's your experience been taking that grassroots route?
Yeah, exactly. Echoing what Bri and Harry said, we're running against an establishment, AIPAC backed candidate that's been, this is actually his first, run through in office. And like you mentioned at the top of this, the Democratic Party for so long has fundamentally failed to deliver for working class people for a while. And the fact that the party refuses to acknowledge that and acts as if we lived in a utopia until Donald Trump just spawned out of nowhere and suddenly everything went to hell, is so incredibly frustrating, because they look at grassroots candidates like us, and a lot of the establishment sees that as a threat to them, and therefore actively works to discourage us from running. And one of the biggest realizations that I personally had is that this is an entire billion-dollar industry that elections are run off, that are work through different, whether that be campaign managers, whether that be, people that are working in the industry that have different organizations that support that, whether that goes down to the type of endorsements that are given out, which are all centered, unfortunately, around how much money people can bring into their campaigns. And for example, when we started our campaign, we never once were asked a single question about policy or about what we're going to do to deliver for working class people. Never once from anyone in the campaign industry. It was always focused on, okay, how much money can you raise off the bat? How many donors can you bring into the party? How many, all centered around the amount of money that candidates can bring in. And that is one of the fundamental flaws that we have as a country, is that our focus is not on what we can do to deliver for people and actually improve people's lives in our country. The single focus is on, okay, how much money can you bring into the DNC? How much money can you bring into the DCCC? And that's the entire focus of people that are in office, essentially, is just to funnel money into their campaigns. And clearly we've seen time and time again, they do not care where that money's coming from. Like I mentioned at the top of this, AIPAC is a perfect example of that, where we have our our country supporting and actively funding an active genocide in spite of the atrocities that are being occurring. We just hear our politicians just turn a complete blind eye because they're getting so much money from these things. And that goes into, the corporations that funnel money into our government, which has resulted in us living in a monopolistic oligarchy that the working class are suffering for because of. So I hope it's like a big eye opener to realize that this is an embedded institutional system that is and purposely built this way to prevent grassroots candidates from penetrating that system. But with that being said, the way we combat that is people power. And that's one of the biggest things that we've seen across the country is so many people are stepping up and saying, hey, enough is enough, that we got to be the ones to fundamentally change this system and to stop relying on the same status quo things that we've been seeing for time and time again. So like candidates like Bri and Harry are like the perfect example of people working to combat that. And I honestly think we're going to be able to do it this election cycle because things have gotten so bad where people are so fired up and really realizing that no one's going to come save us, that we got to be the ones to do it ourselves. So I have so much hope in that regard, in spite of how difficult it is. I do have a lot of hope and to see where we can go because this is just a small sample of the amount of candidates that are running across the country. And we've already seen a lot of good momentum with the primaries in Texas and North Carolina. And I'm very eager to see how that'll continue through this election cycle. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because one of the things that that we talk about, like here in Florida, I mean, our state's an incredibly gerrymandered state. And even in this incredibly gerrymandered state that has leaned red for a long time, like my Senator Ashley Moody, she is just her seats. She's in the hot seat. She's ahead by like maybe 1 or 2 points to the two challengers. The governor's race is within 1 or 2 points. They're only and this is this is MAGA country, right? Like this is the birthplace of MAGA. This is the birthplace of Moms for Liberty. And even still, right? So that it does bring a lot of hope seeing things like Texas, North Carolina, seeing all of these younger, progressive candidates actually winning in places that, the establishment says they couldn't do.
Shout out to Ashley Bell in North Carolina for winning her primary. And
Woo!
I want to also give Kaya his flowers.
Yeah.
His opponent had
incredible.
to spend his opponent had to spend $8 a vote to Kaya's 33 cents a vote.
Insane.
Well, see, and doesn't
That's
that
a
say
win.
something?
At 24
It does.
years old.
At 24. I told him yesterday, I was like, do you know the kind of things I was doing when I was 24? It was not running for Congress.
Oh my gosh.
And what was it,
Yeah.
43% of the vote or something crazy?
Yeah,
Insane.
he was very close. He was very close.
Well, since you all are just like right smack dab in the middle of that, let's dive into that just a little bit. What is that telling you? I mean, of course, we all know what but you're in it. What does that tell you as a grassroots candidate who's going up against not only this, let's just call it what it is, this fascist regime of pedophiles and pedophile protectors, but also corporate establishment Democrats at the top that
just as much a problem.
Yes.
Yeah, I say that oftentimes in my campaign. It matters, but it doesn't really matter. Rick Allen is 74. I'm 31. Average age of constituent in my district is 38. So either way you spin it, he's got a lifetime. Whether he is Republican or Democrat, there is a 40-year span in between him and the average age of the person that he's supposed to be representing and representing well, right? It does not matter if you are a Democrat, Republican, liberal, independent. A 40-year gap is a disconnect. It's point blank period. Like there's no way about it. It's a problem, right? And, I think a lot of people are starting to see that Congress, no matter what side, they're struggling with their anatomy. They're lacking their spines here lately. And I think people are tired of it. And I think it's showing.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
tired.
that just echoes exactly what we're hearing on the ground is 90% of the people we talk to, they get it. They realize that the system is fundamentally broken. And if we don't elect new types of Democrats specifically, that we'll just be stuck in these cycles where we keep losing to the crazy pedophile rapists. And we get stuck in these same exact cycles over and over again, where you have the pendulum swing one way, then the pendulum swing another. And one of the biggest frustrations is that we know that that's how politics tends to work, right? So when Democrats win elections, they take that as a stamp to say, see, we're doing everything correctly. See, let's just keep doing what we're doing, which is clearly not the case. And if we don't elect new people into those positions now and make those structural fundamental changes, we'll just keep seeing that pendulum swing back and forth, where the working class are the ones left to suffer every time. So I think what we've seen in these elections is just a reassurance of what we're seeing on the ground, of what people actually want in the change, which is why I'm super hopeful that this will continue through this entire election cycle and hopefully well beyond as well.
Joe, being a candidate and being in the middle of this, it really highlights the structural weaknesses of our system. I think it's very easy for Americans to assume that we have this whole democracy thing figured out when we really don't. My husband was a chief of staff for a member of parliament in Australia. He's from Australia originally. And I went through a couple campaign cycles with him over there. It was very interesting to see their much more functional democracy firsthand. They have a ranked choice voting system, which is very, very different from anything we have here. And they also have a much more robust public finance system. Money is just not nearly the same factor it is here. And I thought of that, Bri, when you mentioned that your opponent has a $2 million war chest. I mean, how is any normal person supposed to overcome that? It's basically impossible.
And not even just his war chest. You want to know also something really crazy?
Yes.
When Rick Allen was in his 20s, he started a contracting company, construction business, whatever. The like. And when he got into politics, he didn't sell it. He simply transferred ownership to his wife. His son runs it. It's now a multi-million-dollar company. They have several locations across the Southeast, and they just did a $21 million deal with the Augusta Airport, which is where he is a sitting member of Congress. But because it's in his wife's name and it's in his wife's name and ran by his son, so it's not against the rules.
Look at the Iran war, right? And the news coming out that these what is that betting site? Kalshi? Is that how you say it? Yeah, where all of a sudden these 8 accounts came out of nowhere, made huge bets, and made huge, or the fact that Congress people are buying stocks that are going through the roof now. How is that legal?
It's absolutely crazy. And betting markets like Kalshi, now you have a huge incentive those betting markets encourage insider trading. And so now you create a huge incentive for people in the administration who know that there are going to be no consequences for whatever financial crimes they get up to. They know that they're not going to be prosecuted or they're going to get a pardon down the line. And so it creates a huge incentive for them to make these outcomes that they're betting on into real life. But I just want to go back to what Bri was talking about with the Augusta Airport and very obviously corrupt backroom deals like that. We know how corrupt the Republicans are, and they're very open about it. They're very blatant about it. I'm glad Christine Ohm got fired, but there were some great fireworks in that oversight hearing. I think Joe Neguse from Colorado, he really confronted her about, I think it was a $143 million contract to some marketing firm that had been created 8 days before they got the contract. Obviously, we know what was going on there. The problem is, we know that's happening. The problem is when Democrats pull the same kind of crap, that's why people don't trust us. So in my race, one of my main opponents, one of the more viable out of 24 primary candidates in my race, one of the more viable campaigns is a sitting state delegate but Maryland has a part-time legislature. So that's just his part-time job. His full-time job is he's like the chief lobbyist for Oracle. And in the debate last night, he mentioned that he sits on the state legislative committee that regulates utility companies. And of course, Oracle is one of the biggest consumers of energy through data centers. How is that legal? I mean, and the idea that this is the best we can do as the Democratic Party, no wonder people don't trust us. And when we go back to talking about how our system is structured. I know some of us have open primaries, some of us have closed primaries. I'm running in a closed primary in Maryland. So, I'm only going after Democratic votes in this primary election. The whole district's about 810,000 people. Ultimately, it's only going to be 96 to 98,000 voters that decide who the next representative is, right? 'Cause it's a relatively safe Democratic seat. And so that's one of those structural factors. On the one hand, you only have the most engaged registered Democratic voters who are going to bother to go out to vote in the primary. It's not a surprise that the people that we have been electing through these closed primaries go on to not be the most representative people of the whole district, because you know what? They weren't elected by the whole district.
And that goes to show the importance of primaries. And I think a lot of people are waking up to that. For so long, a lot of people just took it for granted and, went through the process. And that's why voter turnout for primaries was so low. But I think that's like one of the biggest takeaways that we need to take from this. All of everything that's going on is primary. It's so important that we get the good nominees in so that they can actually win elections rather than just sliding in these corporatist establishment people every time. Completely agree.
And it really does matter who we nominate in these primaries. I mean, 90% of the seats out there are quote unquote safe seats, right? And that's only gotten worse with all the gerrymandering that's been going on.
Yep.
In this cycle. So realistically, out of let's say Democrats win 220 seats, 200 of those seats are quote unquote safe seats. But the people we nominate for those safer seats, that still impacts how the Democratic Party is perceived nationally. And ultimately, that is going to impact how Democratic candidates perform in those marginal districts.
Oh my gosh, we only have a certain amount of time. You all have a certain amount of time. I just got so many thoughts. I do want to jump into some things that are taking place currently, and Harry, you kind of brought something up about Oracle and then, AI data centers and the fact of, what they're doing, what utility companies.
Huge issue in my district. I mean, Maryland has some of the highest utility costs. It's a huge issue. I hear about it every time we go out door now.
Georgia is now the number one state for data centers. Actually, I pride myself. I chased one out of my county. Whistle blew enough.
Good for you. Wow.
So, here's my question, because I keep reading these articles. Of course, a lot of the articles focus on Tennessee with Elon Musk and his stuff there, which is because it's Elon Musk. But in every article I read, there's utilities go up. There's issues with water because of how much water usage, and now they're talking about physical side effects that are taking place because of noise pollution or whatever else is going on.
Psychiatric effects because of insomnia and hearing something constantly going makes you a little woo woo.
So I'm curious, what are these cities doing? What are these lawmakers doing? Are they just completely ignoring? We don't care what you think?
Mm-hmm. They're capitulating is what they are. I know I can say for the county that I live in, and I live roughly an hour and a half, 2 hours from the district I'm running in. But in this small little community, they tried to put a data center, tried to just slide in a 1 million square foot data center as if no one would notice that. And everybody's like, whoa, what are you doing? Farming community, small community, this is not cool. And so the further digging I did, and the more I got into it, I realized that several members of the board, that's the board of commissioners, and one other board that's directly affiliated with getting this facility built, approved, all that, actually was also on the board for the Norton Agency, who held the contract to sell the land and the building for the damn data center. So they were going to pocket literal millions.
Vanity.
It's insane. It's the capitulation. They will do anything for a buck.
And surprise, surprise, this is something that we've seen literally since the founding of our nation, where things that are environmentally impactful and harmful are always put and prioritized being built in communities that are poor communities, minority communities that are disproportionately drastically affected by that, by the ecological and, like we talked about, psychological and all those factors that go into that. And surprise, surprise, you're seeing that again, time and time again with these data centers as well. And like Bri just mentioned, it's just blatant corruption, and the fact that especially the elected officials that are working to get these data centers in clearly are not paying attention to these factors that are drastically affecting their communities, which is unfortunately not a surprise at all.
I wish people would take all of the NIMBY energy that they use to block building affordable housing or a train line or something, and apply that energy to data centers, to something that's actually harmful. Something that I do point out here in Maryland, I mean, we're right across the Potomac River from data center Alley. It's one of the biggest concentrations of data centers in the world, just outside Washington, D.C. Maryland's part of the same electric grid as Pennsylvania, New York, everything west to Chicago. It's called the PJM interconnection. And so even if we chase the data centers out of this congressional district, even if we chase them across the river to Virginia, it doesn't necessarily solve the problem with utility costs. And this is my point to people, is that it's a federal issue. This is something that has to be addressed at the federal level. And I want to zoom out a little bit here. I think you see a recurring pattern in American history. Every 80 or 90 years, we run into some sort of crisis period. The Revolution, the Civil War, the Great Depression, and World War II. And now here we are. And I think a big part of that is that there's a wave of new technologies that comes along. And then the regulatory state that we developed coming out of the previous crisis is suddenly unable to deal with all those new technologies. So think of all the technological advances that occurred in the early 20th century, the development of the automobile and radio and new communications technology. And the regulatory state that we put in place at the federal level in the Reconstruction era was unable to keep up. So that's when all those three-letter agencies that we still have today came about. The FEC, the SEC, the FCC, et cetera, et cetera.
The alphabet boys.
Yeah, right. All those three-letter alphabet agencies. Now we're at the other end of that cycle where all these new technologies that have come about. We talked about betting markets, crypto, all these new financial innovations, if you want to call them that. That's not something that our banking regulatory system is designed to keep up with. The FCC is built to regulate radio frequencies. They're not built to regulate Discord servers or online forums where people are getting radicalized. Those are examples of how our regulatory system hasn't caught up. Same thing with data centers and regulating utility companies. If we had competent federal authorities and we had members of Congress that were actually looking out for people, we would have gotten ahead of this. If you go home and look at your electric bill, most of your electric bill is, in most places, is not actually supply charges. It's actually distribution charges. It's because the grid is so congested because of all this additional demand from AI data centers. And if we actually had someone at the federal level looking out for consumers, we would have gotten ahead of this. Everybody could have seen this coming a mile away.
Yeah.
So one of our state reps, her name is Aurora Ramam. Coolest thing ever. I went to go file my qualifying fee, and walking across the street back to the car, I hear my name and I look up, and it's my one of my elected state reps. She recognized me from the street. She's like, "Hey, Bri, you're awesome." I was like, "My goodness!" I was like, "Oh, thank you."
What was her name?
Ruha Ramam. She's actually the first Palestinian woman to hold a seat on the Georgia State House of Reps. Yeah.
Wow.
And she's amazing. She actually just introduced a bill that would put a stop, at least a pause, on data centers in Georgia until we at least get to the point we do more research on the environmental factors and the human factors and all these things that affect us and what's around us. It's been received kind of like mixed or so, because the other players in the game are in it for the money, but she's exactly on the right trend. You can't agree to at least stopping them in full right now. At least a pause until we do more research on how harmful they are to people and the environment would be nice, right?
Yeah. I feel like it's a perfect reflection too of the fact that our government is just so reactive rather than forward thinking. Like, to both of your points, we've seen this time and time again, and this is just a perfect example of that, is that we are always looking just to fix the immediate problems that have been building up for the last 10 years, rather than forward thinking to know. For example, AI is a perfect, way to look at that, is that we are well aware of what's going to come. We're well aware that we're going to see mass layoffs. We're well aware that we're going to see a giant environmental impacts with these data centers. And if we aren't actively looking to how do we get ahead of that and build these regulations, to Harry's point earlier, to combat that well before these issues already come. But I mean, we're already well behind the ball. But that's the thing. Have these same old elected officials that were fighting the issues of their time, which were good issues that they were needed maybe at that time, but they just get stuck in this conservative ideology where the status quo is good enough, and clearly they aren't doing enough to look ahead and pass these policies and build these regulatory frameworks that we vitally need to make sure that our people are protected.
I think that's a good point. I think a lot of these older members of Congress literally don't understand the technology that they're supposed to regulate. And that's one disadvantage to having such an old Congress. I think it was maybe during the 1992 election, George H.W. Bush went into a supermarket and there was a barcode scanner. And I guess he had been the vice president and he was the president, and he hadn't actually been in it. And he was a CIA director before that. He actually hadn't been in a supermarket in maybe 20 years. And I guess by 1992, barcode scanners had already been a thing for a while. And he seemed really surprised. Same kind of dynamic going on right now, right?
Wasn't it like, oh man, what hearing was it? It was like Mark Zuckerberg or somebody.
Ted Stevens, the senator from Alaska, and he called the internet
and like
series
did it access to Wi-Fi.
Yeah, and then very on brand, he died in a plane crash in Alaska. Very totally on brand for an Alaska politician. Wild, just wild.
Well, you know what? That brings up a larger point, I think, because to Hunter, what you were talking about, not necessarily the age of people, which is a distinct problem, but you mentioned the fact that our government has been reactive for so long, and there's never time to be proactive, thinking ahead, getting ahead of these things. So y'all kind of represent a large group of people that are doing the exact same thing that you're doing where you are, right? All over the country. All committing to like this grassroots idea of like, we're not taking this APAC money. We're not taking this dark money that other people will take. We're not going to be beholden to the interests. We're not going to sell out, those kinds of things. And we mentioned it before, just kind of touched on it a little bit, how, what an uphill battle that really is. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that everything goes great. And I don't want to say it out loud. I don't want to jinx anybody, but you're doing your jobs, right? You're doing your jobs. It's a year from now, and you're in there trying to make change. I think one of the most striking things about Trump's years is he has pointed out, and I think, Harry, you may have mentioned it, I think he has done an excellent job of showing all of the loopholes, all of the cracks in our system, right? They have exposed those things and taken advantage of them. Where do we go from here? You know what I mean? It almost feels really overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys are the ones that are going to have to fix it, right? Like, you're the ones that we're all looking to make things better. Like, on the other side, I think we are in a real moment of reckoning. That's what this season has been. It's a season of revealing, right? It's pulled back the curtains on all the things.
So I love that you said that.
Yeah,
because that's what's going on.
There has to be a reckoning on the other side of this, like a real, all the way down.
Well, are any of y'all familiar with Sir John Glubb? He's a British soldier, wrote a book in 1978 called The 250-Year Empire Theory. And it's the idea, the theory, that at 250 years, every major empire either falls or experiences a major shift. And there's actually different nuances, different caveats, different indicators that would suggest that a country is edging its way into its fall. If you go by his theory, we are technically in the age of decadence, or we are experiencing a lot of anti-intellectualism, a call to nationalism, some weird call to nostalgia, make America great again. But you ask them back to when? Civil rights, women's rights. When was it great for me? Right. So I've been saying this, especially online in my platform spaces. I've been saying this consistently that hang tight. I think white people's nervous systems have to catch up to what this is, but this is white supremacy rearing its ugly, nasty head one good goddamn
So
last
glad
time.
you brought that up. Yes.
100%.
That is what it is. This is an extinction burst. This supernova stars, before they die out completely, they have the gnarliest explosion, and this is what this is.
Do you all know who Lisa Sharon Harper is? She's a historian. She's got some really good books. She's a little bit more on the Christian side of things, but she's a historian. And I talked to her recently, and she brought out a point that I had never heard articulated the same way. She said, "We're still fighting the Civil War. That's what's taking place. Like, the war never ended. We're still fighting it." And
do you want to hear what I wrote down on my notepad when y'all were talking about how they had being proactive versus reactive? I wrote down conservative actually have been proactive for the past decade. We're the ones who we haven't been reactive or proactive. We haven't done anything.
Exactly.
But they've been indoctrinating kids in high school, in homeschool groups. They've been indoctrinating people from the pulpit in their communities. The Confederacy never went anywhere. It just went underground. And so the conservatives, they've been very proactive in what they wanted in their ideologies. It's us that were complacent and lax about it. Like, democracy, every inch of it has to be fought for. And I think a lot of Democrats have forgotten that.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. We've been very complacent. I think the era, especially that we grew up in, there were so many very quick advances for things like gay marriage, things that almost felt like they came out of the blue. That was a court case. We didn't even really have to do the hard work of getting legislation passed for that. And I think that led in many ways to this sense of inevitability that the arc of history always bends towards justice. And I think this is a real wake-up call, especially for our generation, for those of us who grew up in a relative era of peace and progress, that we can't take this for granted. Since we're throwing authors out there, I'll throw one more. Timothy Snyder, he used to be at Yale. He's currently in self-imposed exile, I believe in Toronto, because he sees what direction this country is going in right now. And he knew to get the hell out while he still could. But he wrote a book several years ago. He contrasts two different types of politics: the politics of eternity versus the politics of inevitability. The politics of inevitability, again, the same idea that the arc of history always bends towards justice, that progress is inexorable, and we can kind of take it for granted. And the other side of that, which I think these two theories really describe the Democratic and Republican parties right now very well, the politics of eternity is very much that grievance politics. They know they want to stop progress. They know they want to go backwards. It's not so much that they're picking a specific point in actual history to go back to. They want to cherry pick what they like from different eras. So, they'll take what they like about the 1950s. They'll take what they like about the 1850s. They'll take what they like about the 1760s, and they'll throw that all together. But you see this is a common pattern it's not just the United States. You see it in fascist regimes all over the world that, make Italy great again, make Germany great again, make Russia great again.
Call to nationalism.
Exactly. So many similarities between what's going on in the US right now and what Putin has done in Russia in the last 25 years. That, always looking backwards to this era of glory in the past and trying to recreate that through military action. I think it was pretty wild that the current administration, I forget if it was Trump or Pete Hegseth, someone said that this isn't a war, it's a special military operation.
Pete Hegseth said that.
Which is it's literally how Russia entered the Ukraine war in 2022, or at least when they escalated into a full-scale invasion. They said, "Oh, we're not starting a war, we're ending a war. Ukraine has always been at war with Russia, and we're ending the war. It's straight out of 1984, right? Oceania has always been at war with.
I'm trying to figure out what the hell God Pete Hegseth is talking to over there in his white supremacist church.
Right. Yeah. Starting Armageddon.
What God are you speaking to?
That Jesus appointed Trump to start Armageddon. Like
whatever God will forgive him for whatever he did to his second wife, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I feel like this is.
I mean, even drunk, he has to know that uttering the words Armageddon to the United States military is insane. He has to know that.
It's insanity. And I feel
there was a report the other day. There was a military religious freedom organization that said American commanders have been telling their soldiers that this is this is part of the plan to bring about the end of the world and
literally
some sort of eschatology there. I don't.
It's so beyond, and I'm not surprised, unfortunately, but that's what you get when you elect Christian nationalists into office, and they turn that into a justification to exercise what we were just talking about. All of which ultimately boils down to money and private corporations and private individuals making billions of dollars off of these conflicts at the expense of innocent lives, millions of which we've seen perpetrated by the military-industrial complex. And I feel like all of this is a perfect encapsulation of the fact that we as progressive candidates, it's one thing to call out these systems and say how horrible they are, but one of the most important things is that we offer an alternative to that with specific solutions on how we're going to deliver to fix these issues, which is why I think the Democrats have done so poorly in the past, is that they've just focused on, look at how horrible everything is, look at all these negative things, which is obviously, it's super important that we're fighting evil actively, but we also have to be doing good as well on the same side and having policy specifics that we can be pushing for that would combat these issues. And like we were talking about earlier, look forward so we can actually be delivering for working class people and improve these systems rather than, it's easy to just keep talking about how horrible it all is, but that's the biggest thing. And that's one thing that's so reassuring with so many of these progressive candidates like Bri and Harry, is that they have specific policies that they will day one be fighting for every single day that can get to the root causes of these issues, rather than just the catchphrases and slogans that we see from the party establishment that say, I'm going to fight for the working class and fight for healthcare and fight for this. It's like, that's just nonsense. But we need specific,
your strongly worded letters are falling on deaf ears.
Bingo. Yeah.
Joe, I want to go back to something you said before. You talked about how the Trump administration has exposed a lot of the rot in our system, and to some extent, maybe a lot of it was held up just by the fact that Democrats weren't as obvious or blatant or willing to break these norms, that a lot of our institutions are just held up by norms and not actual laws. I want to throw one question back on you and the group. I think we all know what the answer is, but does it make any sense as a political project to try to reset American government back to 2015, back to the pre-Trump era, does it make any sense to reset our political system and our government back to the exact conditions that produced Donald Trump and a fascist movement in our country? No, of course not.
These people, this did not happen in a vacuum. These people did not just spawn. What did Kamala say? What's something about the coconut tree? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's just like, they didn't just show up. People like Hegseth and Stephen Miller and Diaper Dawn, they are all products of supremacy, which is the wickedest tool, the sharpest tool, the hottest tool, the heaviest tool that America has ever had, and it never got rid of it.
No,
and I have a question. Are a product of it.
Yeah, I have a question that speaks to this, but you brought up Harris, and can we just pause for a moment and think? If America had just
listen to black women,
I can't tell. I still wear my Harris shirts because, like, out in public, because I'm just like, I don't want people. Because look at me. I mean, and I'm wearing a hat, but I'm also bald, bearded, with glasses, white dude.
It's giving get in the vehicle, sir.
Right. So what could have been, right? What could have been?
These things
here's my question.
Goddamn close.
I know. Listen. I know. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm really not. But when we finally get to the Nuremberg trials, right? When MAGA finally crumbles, and it is crumbling, it will crumble. We will be past this one day.
We'll call
And
them
they
the
stand
ballroom
before,
trials.
yes, yes. And when they stand trial, I'm not a betting man, but I bet everything I own that we're going to find out that Musk manipulated things, that Harris should have been should have been our president, all kinds of other stuff that we won't go to.
He said that already, though.
I was going to
know.
say, yeah, find out. We already know.
And also, I
No,
don't know
that's
if you
true,
guys
too.
know
I'll give you
about
that.
that whole voter election fraud that they raided the Fulton County office for. The only fraud they found was from Elon. So,
and to that point too, just the structural and purposeful things that are done through like the legal system. Or for example, we saw in Texas, where polling places are purposefully, closed early, purposely restricted, all of those things, those systemic issues, on top of the blatant corruption where you have the richest man in the world spending $250 million to get the president elected and then gets appointed to the most powerful position in the government in Doge is just like obviously one example of the complete blatant corruption. But yeah, to your point, it is just beyond insanity.
It's a little bit easier to be a so-called conspiracy theorist when the conspiracy theories keep being proven true over time.
I was just going to say that y'all do realize that the whole entire term conspiracy theory was invented by the FBI to disparage real life truths, right? So I don't know if we're just telling the truth or it's just.
And by the way, since we're talking about institutional democratic politicians, I think this is a really important point. There was an article in the Atlantic recently that went into some detail about the behind the scenes process for bringing the Epstein files bill, or I guess it was a discharge petition, about getting that law passed in the first place. And they detailed that one of Ro Khanna's staffers, just like kind of a deputy something relatively junior staffer, said, hey, what if we wrote a bill or introduced a bill about the Epstein files? And all the other staffers in the office shut it down. They said, no, look, we're trying to promote Ro Khanna as this like serious economic policy guy. We don't want him to get bogged down in this conspiracy theory, pedophiles, rape, Epstein Island. That sounds like a big mess. We want to be the party of serious people. We want to be, but in the end, they went ahead and did it. And it was a massive political success. And of course, it was the right thing to do morally, but that's almost besides the point. But it was a massive political success. It was something that a lot of people really focused on. It cut to the heart of the issue, which is that a lot of people feel that there's one set of rules for a certain class of people and politicians and another set of rules that the rest of us have to abide by. And that's why it's so cutting. And I think it speaks to the institutional culture in the Democratic Party that so many of those other staffers in that office didn't want to go down that road, even though obviously it was a much more, it was a huge opening for us to attack Trump and the Republicans and stand on the right side of history. Again, almost besides the point. But the fact that they were so reluctant to go down that path, that speaks to the kind of culture, the kind of culture in the Democratic Party. We've been trying to be the party of serious people in serious government for the last 10 or 12 years, whatever it's been. And honestly, how's that going for us?
Well, and the fact that it took the staffer to be the one to say that just goes to show the complete level of incompetence of our elected officials. I don't know if you saw the interview with Thomas Massey he did, but he literally said, we don't know what the fuck we're doing. He said 90% of our elected officials have zero clue when it comes to policy specifics. They just wait for their instructions from the party heads and they vote as they're told. And they have zero understanding of any of these things. They just go through their cycles, go to their fundraisers, go to their things. And it's
these guys they don't even write the legislation.
Never.
That's what's so messed up. It's written by some lobbying groups, or it's written in the West Wing, and then it's delivered to Congress on a platter, and they're just supposed to rubber stamp it like the Russian Duma or something. It's not how our system is designed to work.
They're not legislators. They're just, like you said, rubber stampers. And that's one of the fundamental issues with our entire governmental structure is that we keep electing people that can fundraise millions of dollars for the DCCC, but they cannot write bills. They cannot push for legislation that will actually improve people's lives, fix our economy, fix our government. And they just wait, like you said, to rubber stamp. And it's why we need voices in politics that have understanding about these lived experiences and know how to work on these issues and work with community members and bring all of our communities to the table to work on policy specifics that we can actually be working to improve people's lives rather than just the circus show we see every single day.
I don't know if you guys can hear my dog, but he is snoring like he pays bills.
No.
He's so cute.
Well, let me
I
ask
saw
this
him
question
before.
because it goes to everything that you all are talking about. Bri, you brought it up earlier. You brought it up that the fact that MAGA, these conservatives, have been very proactive, and they've been very proactive for decades, right? Like names like Paul Weyrich, that helped bring about the moral majority. I mean, you can trace it all back to like even, I mean, of course it goes before, but like this modern iteration, the Goldwater campaign, taking the crazy kind of right-wing stance that he did. And then some of those very same players create the moral majority in the late 70s into the 80s, and Reagan giving them power and blah, 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 blah. And you also brought up the point of indoctrination, and one of the most effective indoctrination tools that this country has ever seen has been the American church. And I say that as somebody who grew up in that. I say that as somebody who still pastors. You obviously
Grew up in a white Christian nationalist. I went to high school in a white Christian nationalist cult. My parents put me in this homeschool program called Veritas Classical Academy. We literally had creationist textbooks.
I know that one.
Yeah. I survived Veritas.
Yeah. So my question is, because that pipeline is still there, right? Like that, what we're seeing is the result of that pipeline, where you have these churches that are indoctrinating millions of people. Mm-hmm. They're handing that down to their kids. Their kids are going to these homeschool programs, then going to these Bible colleges, these very fun, which I did. I went to a very fundamentalist Bible college. Then they're coming out, and then they're pastoring churches who are then indoctrinating a new generation of people, which is why Pete Hegseth can say what he says without blinking an eye, because I remember being there. I remember thinking that during the first Iraq War. Mm-hmm. Now, so my question is, and maybe you don't have an answer off the top of your head, but one of the things that's so effective from that, right? Not only when you mix God into it, like this is what God says, and if you don't know any better, then okay. But you also have a common enemy, right? Like that's what I grew up with. The world, right? Just this big blanket term. The world is out to get you. The world, everybody that's not in here is the world. And so there's this common enemy. That can bind a group of people that wouldn't normally bind together very quickly, because you've got like Paula White, who's with Trump, under the same tent as somebody like Mark Driscoll. If I don't know if you all know who Mark Driscoll is, those two are completely opposed to one another, but they're under the same tent because of the political goal, right? Mm-hmm. How do the Democrats, how do the left, whatever terminology you want to do, how do you combat that?
Yeah. So I think this is super layered, and I'm a therapist, so I look at everything from a clinical purview. So studies have shown, like thousands of studies have shown, that conservatives, right-leaning people, Republicans, whatever you want to call them, their amygdala presents larger. It's overactive because the amygdala controls the fear responses in the brain. And so what these churches and the news stations and all the right-wing organizations are doing is preying upon people's fear. And what people are doing is trauma bonding over a shared fear, right? And they are convinced that, we're doing something to quell our fears, where if we do this, we won't be so fearful. If we do this, it won't be so scary for my kids, my grandkids, their kids, right? And it creates this endless cycle of fear. And it's how Republicans came up with the terminology flooding the zone. They do that on purpose. They want you to feel like the immigrants are kind of going to come rushing through your front door and stuff a chimichanga down your throat. That's exactly how they want you to feel on purpose, right?
Don't threaten me with a good
very
time.
hungry. I really hope that happens to me today.
But I think that, I think the direct antidote, it's exposure and education. So I think so much of what I would say is education breeds tolerance, right? And the more misinformed, undereducated you are, the more intolerant you tend to be, right? And when we have sects of our society that are stuck in these organizations, communities, churches, households, relationships, whatever it may be that's influencing them. It is hard to see outside of that bubble, right? But I think if we keep towards the tactic of educating properly, of using words as they were intended to use, showing people that, like, no, this is actually not extreme, right? And I think it's going to be a long uphill battle because the miseducation of everyone in this country, I say Miss American propaganda is the hardest working bitch I know. We're going to have to, we got a long haul because all of it is so rooted in miseducation, which is by design.
Yeah.
Because if a populace is in fear, it can be controlled, which I think the Republicans have figured out very well. So I think it's our job to offer solutions for fear,
Right.
in ways that don't feel disparaging, in ways that don't make people feel unintelligent or small. And I think that's a really, really hard line to draw, especially with the disparities in education in this country.
Exactly.
It's hard to kind of change and adjust language sometimes, because I think that also just goes right into, again, being intellectual is the thing right now. So oftentimes you hear even comments on my videos, things VP Harris has said, why is she talking down at me? Why is she saying this and that? And it's like, oh, you're intimidated by intelligence. Oh, okay. Why didn't you just tell me that? I just dumb it down for you. Right. And so I think, we have to toe the line of relaying, if not changing the message don't have to change, just the way in which it's delivered, and educating people properly, exposing people, not hiding away people. We need to speak up for trans individuals. We need to speak up for marginalized communities. We need to speak up for BIPOC individuals. We have to, because what has happened in our society is we've normalized white supremacy, and we've got to stop. We have got to call it. No, it's not all right that mama and papa, oh, they just think that way. No, it's not okay, babe. It's not okay, right? And so I think as long as we keep toward an honest and intentional effort in the truth and educating, we'll get through this a lot quicker, because this is the age of anti-intellectualism.
Exactly. And why you've seen a concerted effort to completely dismantle our education systems. And that's been the
people can't name what they don't recognize. If you no longer have the book on white supremacy, you no longer know what it looks like.
Yep. Bingo. And that's a perfect example of that. Literally banning books that talk about these issues because it's intentional to allow these issues to continue, which is why we need to fundamentally revamp our entire education system, focus on specifically communities that need the most help disproportionately, and work to combat these people that are actively working every single day to tear down our institutional systems, to build this this made up idea of what they think America should be. Yeah, I cannot agree more.
Yeah, I always say the only trickle-down effect that actually works is if we take care of the lowest and the weakest of us, then all of us will be okay.
Always.
That's the only trickle-down effect that actually works.
Exactly.
Well, let me ask this. I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree. I actually 100% agree, because if I had been given certain things, although that's probably what saved me. I was in public school, and my parents too. They weren't super fundamentalist, but when to go back to it, when Pete Hegseth goes up there, or maybe not Pete Hegseth, just with a microphone, right? But we know who his pastor is, Doug Wilson, part of this Reformation movement. I can't remember what it's called, where they believe
It's not
all
important.
kinds of insanity. Yeah. Do you just? I mean, obviously, I think most of us can look at that with Iran and be like, that's ridiculous. I think even people that are still within the church can look at that and think that's still ridiculous. Although I know people that would not. Do you just, because one of the things I'm seeing lately, especially in online spaces, there's a lot of people leaving MAGA. But do we just not waste? I don't want this to come across as mean or dismissive, but do we just not worry about the base that's not going to leave and just really focus in on, like, I can't believe that anybody would still be undecided, right? Like that blows my mind. Or non-voters, or those people that haven't been engaged.
Y'all are gonna laugh at me, but have you ever heard stories of the men Harriet Tubman left behind? Everybody came making to freedom. If you have all the tools given to you, if you have things handed to you, if you have people saying, hey, this is not right, this is harmful, this is wrong, this is not okay, and you still are actively making choices and literally turning your back on everyone telling you that you are wrong, then the fallout is on you.
Yeah, you made your bed.
Because you know how they always tell you, be careful when you save someone drowning because you could drown yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I kind of feel about it. Like, I always want to create spaces. Like, one of the things I'm doing in the clinical world is working on starting up groups for people who do want to deconstruct and leave MAGA and creating those safe spaces. And so I will always want to have those safe, open spaces, but you have to be willing to walk into that safe, open space.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna bring it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You got to come to me, right? And
funny.
I think that's with those people, it's the same. Like, you have to be willing to cross over.
Bri, it's funny you mentioned, saving someone who's drowning. I think about the other firefighters at my station who that's their job is literally to save people. When I joined my fire station like 12 years ago, it was still very 50-50 Democrats and Republicans. It's really just been in the last decade or so. A lot of those guys used to be, a lot of Irish families, a lot of union members. These are, historically very blue collar, blue voting constituencies. And it's really just in the last decade that for some reason, it's become culturally unacceptable for them to support Democrats. They've been thrown a lot of propaganda about what the Democratic Party stands for. And there are, I would say cultural factors why they feel the need to vote Republican and support MAGA. I think a lot of those guys, I'm just thinking about the guys I know in my station. I think a lot of these voters can be won back. But Joe, to your point, yes, there's going to be a core that you're never going to be able to reach. And you guys know that much better than anybody. There are some people that are just going to be too far down the rabbit hole to pull back in. And that's just something we're going to have to live with as a society. But Bri, I thought you made a really important point about not talking down to people. We've done a very good job as the Democratic Party at kicking people out and making people feel unwelcome in the Democratic Party and canceling people out of the party, in many cases for some very problematic things. But we do have to be open and welcoming and not hang it over people's heads that they voted for Trump in the 2020 election or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
go ahead, Hunter.
I was going to quickly say, and realizing that there is this entire ecosystem built around propaganda that is being potentially funneled to these people where they live in a completely different reality than someone who's absorbing like leftist media or those things, like, and they genuinely believe these things to be true, and which is why they come to these insane conclusions ultimately. But realizing that there's a lot of things that we can do to try and combat that echo chamber that they're stuck in. But like you said, there's obviously going to be a point where there's a percentage of people that will refuse to acknowledge that or see that. But I do think there are a massive chunk of people that are willing to listen to logic and reason and see through that. It's just
absolutely
creating that.
I'm a substance use therapist, and one thing that I struggle with at the beginning of my residency was like, oh my God, I have to like drag my client out of addiction by his ears. Like I can't let him go down like this. And my professors and my clinical directors are always telling me like, we hear you, you feel you, but you do your job. And your job is to be the best therapist that you can be, provide all the resources that you can provide. You cannot work any harder than your client. And that has stuck with me. And that is something that I think about with individuals who don't want to listen to logic and reason, right? Like, I did the best I could. I provided my sources.
Mm-hmm.
I provided
you can lead a horse to
video
water.
context. Like, I did everything that I could. And the ball is now in your court. And if you want to throw the ball over the fence instead of making a slam dunk, all right, on you. I can't. I have people to save who want to be saved, right?
Yeah.
And
Joe,
go ahead, Harry.
Oh, sorry, Joe. I want to go back to your previous question about the pipeline, across generations of this sort of dogmatic fundamentalism. I also just want to point out that right now it's also infecting the highest levels of our government. There was a memo going around at Liberty University. I think it said, "Oh, don't worry about your GPA. That's not important. The most important thing for getting a job in the Trump administration is your fealty to the Trump administration." So that they're actively recruiting that sort of person into the government.
Traitor.
Listen, it's been that way. Listen, man, I can remember. I knew places that you could go to get into that pipeline, and I'm talking about like in the late '80s, in the '90s, when I hit college, and the mid to late '90s. Yeah. That doesn't surprise me at all. That makes total sense. And because the goal, I can promise you, the goal was to hit those places of influence. So that they could take over, right? The 7 Mountains Mandate. I don't know if anybody knows that, where the 7 spheres of influence in the United States, these particular kinds of Christians should be running those things. Now, I don't want to belabor the point, and I know that you all have things to do, and we've already gone over an hour. I kind of want to just land the plane because I know that you all are so busy, and probably have things that you need to be doing instead of sitting and talking.
I'm going out to the
I'm
new
a talk
ice warehouse.
therapist. It's kind of all
Nice.
I do.
Oh, okay. All right then. What is like, what's keeping you in the fight? There's so much bad news right now. Like, it's just so heavy. And, every morning it's like, I get up and I have some coffee, and I don't know why I do this. I'll pick my phone or turn on the TV or something.
What
And it's
fresh
almost
hell
just
is
like,
this?
yes, what fresh hell awaits us today? Like, that's literally one of my first thoughts, What is keeping you in this, despite all of the obstacles that you have to face as grassroots candidates, and then also everything else? What's keeping you in it personally?
So I'll just speak for myself. I'm a new dad as of 22 days ago. My son was born really early. He's doing great, but the last 3 weeks I've been thinking a lot about what kind of country he's going to grow up in. We're gonna have voters in the 2028 presidential election that were born in 2010. That they're not going to remember an era of U.S. politics before Donald Trump.
Oh my gosh, I'm so old.
That was really loud, Harry, and I'm really upset with you for
Seriously,
that.
you just called me out.
I was already
feel
finished
attacked.
college. I mean, let me tell you, it's upsetting to like ride the fire truck with some of the juniors who were born in the 2010s now. I mean, it's upsetting. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I can
But
imagine so.
Dude, I'm
I'm
a
sorry to
parent.
throw that one on you. But thinking about what kind of world my kids are going to grow up in, that is a huge motivating factor for me to, stay up at night and get up early in the morning and do everything I'm doing. I would also say that my family background impacts me a lot. My grandparents were Holocaust survivors. They're my family Jewish Holocaust survivors. They came to the U.S. in the 1950s. Whoever wasn't murdered. And I often think about their experience. Maybe little Jewish kids learn about fascism before other little children, but I've often thought to myself, what would I do if I were in their position with a fascist movement rising around me? How would I respond? How would I try to fight back? And
unfortunately, you can answer
running
that
for
now.
office in this case, that's part of my answer. We're not on a good path, but we can still pull this back. Like Bri said earlier, this is the big supernova explosion. This is the last gasp of white supremacy and trying to pull our country back into the distant past. The future is still it's still up to us to decide. The future's not written yet, and we can still pull this back from the brink. But it's going to be a lot of work. That's what keeps me going.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. For me, it's always goes back to the people. Like, I was brought up with the sense that, and being told time and time again, that the most important thing that we can do in this life is to love and be compassionate and show empathy and serve others. Most importantly, using our power and our privileges to help and care and love for others. And we've seen, like Bri and Harry have been talking about this entire time, the onslaught against our people that we've seen for decades now, where our people are suffering and have been for so long. And we need voices that are willing to work unconditionally, unapologetically, people first. And that is so vitally important and needed. And that's every single time is what I go back to, because obviously it's a massive uphill battle and there are some very, very dark days. But like Harry said, our future is for us to determine. And we are the people of the United States of America, the most powerful people in human history, because the decisions that we make not just impact the lives of everyone in the United States, but drastically impact the entire globe. And we've seen, obviously, the wrong decisions and how that can drastically negatively impact the world. But to think of the good that we can do from that, to create an entire new civilization for humanity to thrive off of, based off of compassion, empathy, working together to build our communities up, rather than tear them down like we've seen time and time again. So that always is what I go back to every single time, is that duty and that obligation to love and care and do everything we can to improve other people's lives and serve others.
Sold.
So for me, it's definitely layered. Kind of in the same vein as Harry, just family background. My last name is Woodson. It's a slave last name, means whoever owned my family were woodworkers. And that name also dates back to 1619. The first man to trade human bodies for goods and services was Dr. James Woodson. Further along my bloodline is Carter G. Woodson, who is the father of Black history. And so I take a lot of pride in the resilience of my bloodline. We have been here for a very long time dealing with this shit. And I have no intention of being ran out of anywhere. White supremacy didn't get my forefathers out of here, and it will not get me out of here. And just, I have a lot of constitution, a lot of resilience. I survived active addiction. I survived being trafficked by a cartel out of the Dominican. I already had my worst day. Donald Trump ain't shit. So we live to fight another day.
Okay, I'm ready to run through a wall now. Hey, listen, seriously though, as just literally an average Joe, like I'm literally if you look up average Joe, that's me, right?
Oh, don't sell yourself short. Come on.
No, man, no, listen. I'm like 6 foot on a good day, like 190 pounds, from middle America. I'm white. My name is Joe Smith. I am average Joe. Okay. So when
Average
I
man's
say
only like
this,
5'9", 5'10". Come on.
that's all right. Well, that's true. So when I say this, I think I speak for a lot of people right now. We are just, I'm sure you hear that all the time, just exhausted. So to sit here and to have the privilege to listen to the three of you, it's a gift. It's a gift to know that you represent so many others that are literally fighting to save the country, right? Like so many of us are doing things. And, you know, like here locally, I get to help be part of the team that plans our local No Kings. And I get to be a part of the Reasoned Reality stuff that's like, you know, on you know, kind of behind the scenes doing stuff. But I can't affect change the way that you all can. I just can't. So to be able to sit here and listen, to get to know the three of you, man, y'all just made my day. You made my week. It's just, I don't know.
Well, feelings
I don't know.
mutual.
Just thank you. Yeah. Thank you all so very much. Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you,
us
Joe.
on. This is great.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Yeah, it was. It was so good. And we'll probably have you back on as things kind of heat up when you're able to. We're going to have all of your information in the show notes so people can go in, they can follow you, they can follow your campaigns. If they're local, hopefully that they will start to plug in, but donate as well, even if you're not local. I know what the power of like $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 donations, $10 donations can mean when it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we'll have all of that so people can do that. You know, they can do that. So if you're listening along, hit those show notes, Go hit all the follow things. Even if you can't donate, it's tough for everybody. Then share. Just share the crap out of stuff, right? Like boost it, amplify it. Thank you all again so much.
Thank you.
This was a
Thank you so
immense
much for having
pleasure.
us.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks for following along, everybody. I hope that you know that for many people, you might be the only voice of reason that they hear today. So don't be afraid to use it. All right, friends. Until next time.